7:14 on a Monday. Let's see if I can introduce Mike without messing this up. I'm just gonna let you start talking.
Yeah, let me talk, Dale. Good morning.
Mike's here from Mmmm Mechanic. So far, so good.
So far, so good. It's awfully easy to get tongue-tied on a live production, isn't it, Dale?
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially on Monday morning when it's dark outside.
I haven't even had my first cup of coffee. It's almost empty. Maybe that'll help.
Yeah,
you talk, I'll drink.
You're going to come around. I know it. I got faith in you.
So what's going on at Mmmm Mechanic?
A lot. Had another busy week, and we were discussing Friday about how 2015 is scooting right on out of here.
Can you believe it?
I can't believe it. Because
2 months from today, Christmas is over.
Well, Dale, Sundays we're into November.
Yeah.
And you know how, man, once November 1st flips over onto the calendar, the holidays are staring you right in the eye.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a good time, man. I always look forward to the holidays. Now that I've got a couple of grandkids, you always look forward to it a little bit more. And, it's just time. Time moves on, and it waits on nobody.
What's the new phrase coming out on Facebook? You know it's getting close to Halloween because Walmart's got the Christmas decorations out.
I thought it was getting close to Labor Day because they got the Christmas decorations out.
You know when they start hanging Christmas lights and ornaments on the bags of charcoal left over from summer, it's close to Christmas.
Yes, it is, no doubt.
Anyway, we got a question. Hey, I can relate to this one. I just had the fuel pump replaced on my truck. Why is it in the tank and why does it cost so much? Because engineers keep their head in the clouds. That's why they can't put an electric pump under the hood.
Well, there's a lot of reasons for that stuff.
I think there's a lot of it to do with cooling of the pump to keep it submerged.
You remember back, Dale, on your old Chryslers and everybody else's cars when we had a fuel pump that was mounted on the engine block.
Yep. Run off the camshaft.
Had a diaphragm pump.
Yep.
And those things would suck gas. They made a great amount of suction. They didn't make a whole lot of pressure, but they didn't have to. You remember carburetors, 4 or 5 PSI?
I still have nightmares with carburetors.
Yeah.
I still have one vehicle with a carburetor.
They needed
3, 4.
3 or 4 or 5 PSI to work off of. So, those pumps would suck gas. Those diaphragm pumps were mounted on your engine in the front of the car. Well, the gas tank's in the back of the car.
Yeah.
So it pulled gas on some of them old boats for 15 or 20 feet,
Hey, that old Hemi, it's got 2 4-barrels, so it really had to do some sucking, let me tell you.
And when we went into fuel injection, well, it's a little bit different setup because fuel injection needs pressure, and it needs reliable, constant pressure. But those pumps, those rotary pumps, those little electric pumps, they make good constant pressure, but they don't have a whole lot of suction.
Yeah.
So we wound up with fuel pumps in the gas tank. That's one of the reasons. And with the fuel pump in the gas tank, and you hit it right on the head, it also, all that gas in your tank cools the pump and lubricates it.
Yep.
So that's part of the reason, and another part of it is with that pump in the tank, it does make it a little bit easier for those guys at the assembly line up in Detroit or wherever they're making the cars now. They slap a gas tank up there, hook the connections up, and that's done. And so the pumps are in the tank. That's probably where they're going to stay.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the earlier cars, you could take that assembly out of the tank, and just the fuel pump was replaceable. The little electric motor. Most of the cars now, it's a module. It is one big assembly.
And to me, that's good. My Chrysler van out here is the same way. And y'all did that 6-7 weeks ago.
Yep.
New sending unit, new strainer, new pump.
New everything. It's a whole new assembly that
drops. Is the pressure regulator in there too on that model? I think it was.
Some of them have a pressure regulator built into the pump, and some of them they vary the voltage to the pump through a relay.
Okay.
That controls pressure. So there's a couple of different ways to look at it on that. I'm not sure on your Chrysler, but you get a fuel pump module now, and it's everything. And those things do get expensive. That question's good because some of those things are expensive, and then, depending on the kind of vehicle you have, the replacement can be a pain in the neck, depending on how hard it is to drop a tank. Some of the pickups, they can
take the beds off,
take the bed bolts out of it, and lift the bed up, and you're ahead to do it that way.
Yeah,
and it just depends on that. That varies by application. But that's the story on electric fuel pumps. Now I'll throw out a couple of things here. Fuel pumps are expensive. We don't want to replace them if we don't have to.
Let me give a testimonial from a mechanic, though. 6 to 7 weeks ago, well, in fact, it's when I was helping with the Paul Harrell show in Jonesboro. I was going over to Hardy over at Doug Driesel's studio, and we're doing the Paul Harrell show in the afternoon from 4 to 6. I was there Monday and Tuesday. Well, Wednesday, I'm coming down here to the studio, and I put the key and starting, shut it off, try to fuel pump, finally it started. I knew that hard to start was going to lead to an issue. I called you. Say, hey, what's going to run? Well, I could buy the pump for $192, but at the same time, I'm going to have to get that van up in the air somehow in my driveway and drop the tank and drop the sending unit or drop the tank unit. That would take me 3, 4, 5 hours plus, getting the jack, getting the blocks, getting the jack stands, all that. Got it done for $400.
Yeah. Flat back in a fuel pump or in your driveway sucks. You're trying to drop a gas tank and do all the things you have to do to change one of them, laying flat on your back. Man, that's hard work.
That's hard work because the last time I did that in my driveway, I didn't release all the pressure, and I filled my left ear full of gasoline.
Yeah, you
were talking about burn?
You eventually released all the pressure.
In your ear?
Yeah. Sooner or later, you'll release all the pressure. It just, but, a couple of things with fuel pumps that everything has a service life, and eventually they're going to wear out regardless of what you do. But you can make life easier on that pump, and one of the best ways is keeping better than a quarter of a tank of gas in your car.
Keep it cool.
Yes, and when you're running with a full tank of gas, it is much easier, or half a tank, 3/4. It is much easier for that fuel pump to live and work in there and maintain the pressure it's supposed to. When that gas gets really low, I had a friend of mine tell me the other day, I got in her car to move it, and the fuel light is on and it's flashing. And I said, you're out of gas. No, my trip meter says I have 22 miles left.
I wouldn't go by that trip
meter.
And
I said, well, you realize that's just an approximation. But anyway, it is much harder for that fuel pump in that gas tank with that low of amount of fuel in it to make pressure and pump gas than it is in one that has 20 gallons of fuel in it.
Yeah.
It's working harder. It is pulling more current. It is hotter, and it doesn't have adequate lubrication or cooling going on.
Yeah.
That shortens fuel pump life. It's just, in my mind, that is an absolute fact. So keeping better than a quarter of a tank of gas in your vehicle will help that for sure.
Mm-hmm. What about gasoline additives? I use Seafoam, but I don't use it all the time.
I don't know that any additives are going to help with fuel pump life. I don't, but they sure do help keep injectors clean and do things like that and remove moisture out of your fuel. That's another thing that's hard on pumps is if you buy a tank full of water, buy some, and we only have a limited amount of control over stuff like that. When you're working locally here, you find you a station that you like to use and that gives you good gas, and you stick with it. But when you're out on the road, you buy gas where you can get it, and if you and of course with the ethanol is worse about having with the water.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's just something else too. Water is hard on fuel pumps.
Ironically, and people are going to say, but I get good fuel mileage off of Walmart gas. 99% of the time I buy Shell. They've got the nitrogen-enriched gas, and I get good mileage off of it. But a lot of times I think, like coming up in November, got to run back over to Nashville real quick. I have gotten as high as 24.5 miles per gallon.
Right. And you and I talked about this. It's been a year or more ago. We had a guy ask us about these Tier 1 fuels and different things. You remember that?
Vaguely, yeah. What was it?
About some of these fuels. There's a limited number of manufacturers and stations that have what they label as Tier 1 fuels because of the additive packages and all that stuff in it. And I made the statement then, and I'm going to stick with it. I can buy gas at Casey's here in town.
Good guess.
I can buy gas at Walmart, or I can buy gas in Gassville where I live. And I can't tell a dime's worth of difference in my fuel mileage from any of those places. My truck gets the same mileage all the time.
Yep.
And the biggest difference I can tell in fuel mileage is how I drive it. Yeah, it's on me, Dale. But
when you got the pedal on the floor.
Yeah, they don't do so well. But, again, that deal with the fuel pump, those things that we just talked about will help you extend the life on that fuel pump. Mm-hmm. If your vehicle has a fuel filter that is mounted external from the gas tank.
Change it.
Yes. Change it. They're cheap. Change that thing fairly regularly and make that fuel pump work less hard. Trying to pump gas through a filter that's 50 or 60% clogged, man, that's hard work.
That'll destroy a pump.
It will.
That'll destroy
Let's
a pump.
change your fuel filter when you need to, or at least.
Yeah.
Man, I get a lot of people coming in. They try to change theirs every 10,000, 20,000 miles. That might be a little bit much, but you probably ought to change them every 30,000 miles or something like that.
Yeah.
And that helps. It will extend the life of that pump some.
Something else that needs to be brought to the attention of folks, if you've got a vehicle, 2000 and newer, make sure that gas cap clicks 2, 3, 4 times. I don't care if you're driving GM, Ford, Chrysler, whatever. Make sure that, and don't, if you lose the cap, go buy one.
Right.
They're $7 to $12 at any auto parts store. Can you imagine getting caught in the rain? Even if you got the fuel door closed, you're still going to get some runoff.
It's going to have to run through that gap around the door.
Yeah.
And yes, gas caps are one of those things. We see several vehicles a week come in that has an evaporative emissions leak fault code. And, some of them, you can fix a couple of those by replacing the gas cap. When you look at the rubber seal on it, it's all cracked. Time and weather and hot weather, cold weather, all that stuff has an effect on it. So a new gas cap, you can go, if you want to go to the dealership that, buy an OEM,
sure.
Or you can go down to any of the local auto parts stores and they can sell you one that'll work fine too.
Yep.
And that's a good idea. Yeah, you sure don't want to let your car sit outside overnight in a 2-inch rain. I don't know how much of that water will get down in your gas tank, but I'll guarantee there'll be some of it.
Yeah, even if it's a teaspoon, that's too much.
Yeah, you don't want it in there.
No.
So yeah, and gas caps are cheap, just like you said. They're relatively inexpensive. Good. That's another good point.
For folks that are listening about the fuel pump talk this morning, what tips would you give them to be aware that the pump may be going out?
Well, one of them is what you talked about. Is when you go out in the morning,
long crank time
is long crank time. If you shut your car off and go into the grocery store, and when you come back out an hour later and it has to crank longer than usual to start, many times that's telling you we've got a bad fuel pump. Sometimes when they sit overnight and you go out to go to work the next morning, and a good way to tell on things like that is if you're having that issue. Tomorrow morning when you go out, don't try to start the car. Turn the key onto the run position.
Where all the dash lights come on.
And the fuel pump will run for 2 or 3 seconds. Cycle it on and off and do that 2 or 3 times, and then try to start it. And if it starts right up like it should, well, we've probably got a fuel pump problem. Mm-hmm. And another way to tell is, man, some of these fuel pumps, when they get bad, will get noisy.
Really?
Yeah, you'll hear them. You'll hear them running, thrashing in that. I shouldn't say thrashing, but you will hear them. The hum. You can hear a fuel pump, that electric motor with that hum, and sometimes you hear them, they get louder.
I mean, mine was fine Monday and Tuesday when we're going back and forth to Hardy, Arkansas, and then Wednesday when I came down here, it's like 6:30 in the morning. Uh-oh,
And I had a buddy of mine, we put a fuel pump in his 2001 GMC pickup a few months back, and he told me that he said, that when I would leave work and I'd pull up to the stop sign to pull out onto the highway, it would hesitate, sometimes act like it was going to die. And then after that fuel pump, all that went away. So there are little running issues that may not be big, but it fixed a couple of different things on his truck.
Mmmm Mechanics located Highway 201 North across from Salvation Army. 425-3135 is their phone number. It looks like they've got a full week ahead of them today, Monday through Friday.
Yes.
And, oil change, oil filter, transmission service, fuel injector clean through the motor vac.
Radiator flushes and fills. That's getting ready to get really busy. Once it turns cold, we get a couple of them days where it's cold. We're going to do a lot of radiator stuff. We're doing a lot of oil changes and transmission services. And it's not too early to get your car took care of for the Thanksgiving trips.
1 month from today is Thanksgiving, so let's plan ahead, folks. Give Mike a call.
1 month from today.
Yep.
All right.
26. Yeah, that's what. Yeah. Give Mike a call, 425-3135. They're ready to serve you today, 8 to 5, and the rest of the week, 8 to 5. So,
give us a shout. If you got questions, give me a call. I'll try to answer them, and we can schedule you in. we got some time to do whatever you need to get done.
That brings us up to news time. Be right back.